Now we will read about the poliomyelitis. The poliomyelitis is a condition which manifests as the acute flaccid paralysis. So manifestation of the poliomyelitis is the acute flaccid paralysis, and this is caused by which virus? So poliomyelitis is caused by the poliovirus. And what type of virus is that, and to which family that belongs to? Now say this answer to you in your mind. So yes, poliovirus belongs to Picornaviridae family. And what type of virus it is? It is a non-enveloped RNA virus. Yes, so it is a non-enveloped RNA virus. Now poliomyelitis is caused by wild poliovirus, as I have written here also. So there are three types of wild poliovirus: the WPV1, WPV2, and WPV3. Wild poliovirus 1, 2, and 3. Wild poliovirus 1, 2, 3. The WPV1 is the poliovirus that is causing the infection presently in certain parts of the world, like Pakistan, okay, Afghanistan. These are the countries which are having this poliovirus still today, but the poliovirus has been eradicated from India completely, and India has been declared polio free in the year 2014. Now WPV2, this has been eradicated globally in 1999, and 3 is also eradicated globally in 2019. So at present stage, only WPV1 is the strain of the, or is the type of the poliovirus that is causing the poliomyelitis in certain parts of the world. Coming to the pathogenesis of the poliovirus. So for pathogenesis, we have to first know the mechanism of transmission or mode of transmission. That is, it is spread by the fecal-oral route or by the respiratory droplets. These are the only two methods by which it can spread: the fecal-oral route or the respiratory droplets. Now once they spread, they multiply locally. So if they are going through the fecal-oral route, they will multiply locally in the intestinal epithelial cells. If they are going through the respiratory droplets, then in the tonsils and Pierce patches. So in these sites they will multiply and will enter into the host cells. Then they will enter into the host cell via which receptor? That is CD155 receptor on host cell. So they enter into the host cell by CD155 receptor on the host cell, and after entering into the host cell, they spread to the spinal cord and brain via, not via the nervous route, rather they spread via the hematogenous and the neural spread. This is different from rabies. Okay, in rabies we have seen that the spread of the virus occurs via retrograde axonal transport and via the neurons, but here the spread to the spinal cord and the brain is by hematogenous and the neural spread. Hematogenous and along with neural spread. Okay, there occurs by only the neural spread, but here by the hematogenous and neural spread both. Then after reaching to the spinal cord, they cause damage to the anterior horn cells of the spinal cord, and that's the reason for the flaccid paralysis manifestation. So as the anterior horn cells of the spinal cord are damaged, that's why there occurs flaccid paralysis. Now sometimes it is asked, what is the what change in the neuron is seen earliest of all? So the earliest change that is seen in the neurons is the degeneration of the, so earliest change that we see in the neurons is the degeneration of the nasal body, so nasal body is seen earliest of all. Degeneration of the nasal body is seen earliest of all after poliovirus infection. That is the earliest change in the neurons. Coming to the Clinical features of the poliovirus infection. So in the poliovirus infection, maximum cases remain asymptomatic. So in about 95% cases of the infections remain asymptomatic, while non-paralytic poliomyelitis occurs in about 1% patients, and it presents as meningitis. So non-paralytic poliomyelitis means what? So this means there is no flaccid paralysis, only meningitis is there, and that is seen in the 1% of the patients and is called as non-paralytic poliomyelitis because no flaccid paralysis occurs there. But only few patients are there in which the paralytic poliomyelitis manifests, that is the count is even less than 1%. So in less than 1% of the patients there is paralytic poliomyelitis manifestation, and that can be detected with the classical tripod sign. What is that classical tripod sign? In the tripod sign, there is, in the sitting posture, there will be flexed hip and extended forearms will be supporting backwards, leading to formation of a tripod like structure. So this flexed hip and both extended forearms will make a tripod like structure. This is called as tripod sign. That is a sign of the paralytic poliomyelitis, and this sign is also seen in case of subacute uh, subarachnoid hemorrhage. Now coming to the laboratory diagnosis in poliomyelitis. So first we have to collect the specimen. So from what types of specimen do we collect? So the preferred specimens are the stool sample because it is spread via the fecal-oral route, the rectal swab, and the throat swab at last. So these three samples are the most important samples that we collect for diagnosis. How do we transport the specimens? So specimens are transported in the frozen state. In the frozen state, it is transported. Then we have to do the virus isolation. Virus isolation. So virus isolation, for any virus isolation, we know that we have to choose a cell line. So preferred cell line in case of poliovirus isolation is the primary monkey kidney cell line. Primary monkey kidney cell line. And after the growth of the virus into that primary monkey kidney cell line, we have to detect also the growth of the virus. So for detecting the growth of the virus, uh, um, we can detect by these features, like there will be degeneration of the entire cell sheet caused by the virus. The antigens can be detected by specific antiserum, and we can also use the PCR for detecting the gene of the virus. So by these three methods we can detect the growth of the virus on the cell lines. This is all about the virus isolation. Now coming to the antibody detection. Coming to antibody detection, the antibody can be detected by neutralization test. How? So antibody titer increases in two sera collected at interval of 1 week. So we collect two samples of blood at an interval of 1 week, and if we see that the antibody in the second serum or the second sample of blood is in excess to that of the first sample, then this indicates poliomyelitis. So if the antibodies against the poliovirus has increased from the first sample to the second sample, then that indicates the antibody that detects the poliovirus infection. So increase in the antibody titer indicates the poliomyelitis. Oh, now coming to the molecular methods. So for molecular methods, we use the stool specimens because via that in that specimen we can get the yes, the virus So that is used for molecular method, and the molecular methods used are the, since it is RNA virus, so we use RT-PCR and the multiplex reverse transcriptase PCR. So these are some of the methods which we use for diagnosis of the poliovirus infection. Now coming to the vaccines that has been developed to prevent polio virus infection, and via these vaccines it has been possible to eradicate the poliovirus. So coming to the vaccines, so two types of polio vaccines have been developed, that is the injectable poliovirus vaccine and the oral polio vaccine, OPV and IPV. So there is sometimes confusion between the names. The OPV is called as Sabin vaccine, while the IPV is called as the Salk vaccine. Now sometimes the confusion occurs whether OPV is Sabin vaccine or Salk vaccine, and whether IPV is Salk vaccine or Sabin vaccine. So that can be remembered very easily. See here, here it is written SAL, and here it is written I. In Sabin there is I, in Salk there is AL. AL means oral, okay. AL means oral and I means injectable, and I means injectable. But you have to remember in it uh, opposite sense. Like if it is I, that means I means injectable, but OPV is oral, so it will be Sabin vaccine. And IPV is in Salk we have AL, that uh, that that seems like oral. So but the IPV is not oral, it is injectable, so it should be opposite. So by that we can remember it easily. Coming to the formulations, so injectable polio vaccine contains all the three serotypes 1, 2 and 3, while OPV is present in three forms: the trivalent OPV, which contains 1, 2 and 3 both, the bivalent OPV, which contains 1 and 3, and the monovalent OPV, which can contain any serotype. So currently monovalent OPV, one serotype, uh, containing the one serotype is being used because 2 and 3 have been eradicated, but the IPV contains all the three serotypes. Now in the national immunization schedule that has been released in 2020, the fractionated IPV first dose is given at 6 weeks, and the fractionated IPV second dose is given at 14 weeks. So fractionated IPV, two doses are given, the first at 6 weeks and the second at 14 weeks. While in case of the oral polio vaccines, five five doses are given. The OPV 0 is given at birth, OPV 1 at 6 week, 2 at 10 weeks, OPV 3 at 14 weeks after birth, and OPV booster dose at 16 to 24 months after the birth. Okay, this 0 means OPV 0 dose means it is priming dose. The immunity is primed against the virus at birth against the polio virus. So this is a priming dose that is given at birth, and hence it is called as OPV 0. So total five oral doses of total 5 doses of the oral polio vaccines are given at birth, 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 14 week, and at 16 to 24 months. Now coming to the efficacy part. So the IPV is 80 to 90% efficacious, while the OPV has much greater efficacy. That is, its efficacy varies somewhere in between 90 to 100%. So OPV has superiority in efficacy over IPV. What is the advantage of OPV or IPV? So the advantage of IPV is that it is more safe. Why? Because here we are using the killed virus, so it is more safe. And stability, the stability is also more. So safety is more, stability is more. That is the advantage of injectable polio vaccine. But what's the advantage of OPV? So, advantages of OPV is that it produces herd immunity, produces local immunity. It is much cheaper than IPV, and is also easy to administer because it has to be just given orally. So these are the four advantages of OPV over IPV. What are the disadvantages? So disadvantage is that whatever advantage we see in the case of the OPV will become the disadvantage in IPV. So herd immunity is not seen in IPV, local immunity is not seen in IPV. It is much costlier, and injection is given which needs some practice and is done over practice only. So that's the disadvantages of the IPV. While the disadvantage of OPV, the advantages of the IPV will become the disadvantages of the OPV. So the disadvantages of OPV are that the safety is less because here we use the live attenuated viruses, which may sometimes cause the infection itself. Then the stability is less because it, and due to less stability it requires stringent conditions for to keep it stable. But there is no need of these stringent conditions in case of the fractionated IPV because it has more stability. So this safety and stability are less of the OPV, and that's the disadvantage of OPV. This difference of the IPV and OPV is very important from exam point of view. Rather, sometimes the difference is asked in long questions, in the structured long questions. And also the pathogenesis of and mode of transmission of the polioviruses are important. These are asked sometimes in the community exams, in the university exams. So this is all about the poliovirus infection, out of which this difference between the IPV and OPV should must be remembered. This is a must to know, and this much is enough to know in second year. So this is all about the poliovirus.